Well, let's get everybody back in here from the break, and we have got a great next session. I'm very excited about this. A panelist with all of our, with several of our regional IT leaders. Ben, where's Ben? Ben, I wanted you to make sure you noticed. You know, we talk about leadership skills and stuff, and apparently I have more than you ever thought of. Because did you see all the people installing Java out there? I mean, it was amazing. So, oh really, crowd? Come on, help me out here, jeez. Okay, we've got a few more trickling in, but we are very excited for this. We've asked some very key regional IT leaders to help us out and educate us all with some of the challenges and things that they're going through. So, to lead the show, I am very honored to introduce to you one of probably one of our more recent employees. She's got well over 10 years of IT experience. She is our Director of Consulting Services, none other than Amber Vogel.
Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. So my name is Amber Vogel. I'm the Director of Consulting Services at Network Center. Fairly new to the group. My role is to spend time with all of you to talk about your business challenges and then help you frame solutions around that. Now, I didn't say technology solutions because that's not always the challenge, right? Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's processes. So I get to sit and talk about all those challenges with you and come up with solutions. So find me today if you want to chat about something. Today, I'm going to have an excellent panel of speakers that are going to answer questions that I direct to them. They're actually going to have some dialogue amongst themselves, and then we're going to invite you actually to ask them questions as well. So the topics that all these questions will be geared towards are all the things that we talk about every day: disaster recovery, change management, IT governance, security, staffing, mobility, the concept of computing everywhere, collaboration. So I keep up on Gartner's trends every year. I'm sure we all look at the list. What I've noticed over the last few years is that list hasn't really changed much, but it's been shifting. So we'll notice the same trends show up on the list in just a different way. So this year, Gartner's trends talk about a shift to digital business. I'm actually going to pull up this cartoon here. I think it does itself some justice. The physical and virtual world are merging. And Dilbert's, this cartoon says, "I can't do my work because the internet is too fascinating. The physical world no longer holds my interest. I find joy only on the internet. Can I take a hit on your iPhone?" So I feel like that's our lives every day. Where's my phone? Have you ever lost your phone and you panicked? Or you get to work and you don't have your phone. You don't even know what to do, or you feel lost, or you run home to get it. So that's what Gartner talks a lot about, how this whole shift to digital business is the ability to compute and have access to intelligence everywhere. The world is becoming our computer. So not only do we need to adjust to people having mobile devices, we need to accept the fact that people are mobile. So in the short term, that means we somehow need to connect all the different devices that we need to use and share the information. But in the future, we need to think about how that information isn't tied to an actual device. So as consumers, we expect everything to give us data that we can use to make better decisions, whether my Fitbit is telling me that I'm not moving enough every day, or my phone's alerting me that as I'm driving by a store, there's maybe a good deal that I need to take advantage of, or my credit card statement company's alerting me that I'm spending too much on eating out every month. So we want accessibility to information all the time. It doesn't just stop at home. So how can we make all these features that we have at home and then or how can we have these features at home and then go to work and we don't have the right tools to find answers and compile the information? So how do these shifts affect IT? We know that in order to manage all of these shifts, we need a variety of skills across IT. And so today our panelists are going to share their experience, approach, challenges, and ideas. So let's meet our panelists. Our first panelist is Heidi Kaninenbelt. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial and Management Engineering from Montana State University and a Master's degree in Business Administration from North Dakota State University. She currently manages the applications, data center, and end-user support functions for Otter Tail Power Company's Information Technology Department. Next up is Darren King. Darren King is currently the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the North Dakota University System, a position he has held since November of 2013. In this role, he is responsible for the day-to-day operational leadership of the enterprise systems and services delivered to the 11 institutions of NDUS. Gary Inman. Gary Inman is the CIO for Bell State Bank and Trust in Fargo, North Dakota. He also serves as the president of the Information Technology Council of North Dakota, an organization dedicated to advancing the development, use, and advancement of information technology throughout the state. Ron Gronenberg. Ron has been the City of Fargo's Chief Information Officer since 2000. In his role as CIO, Ron has responsibility for all aspects of IT for the City of Fargo, including strategy, operations, service desk, software development, security, DR, communications, and audio-video equipment. He is also responsible for the technical operations and support of the Red River Regional Dispatch Center. You guys can go ahead and have a seat. So we are going to start with a series of questions. The first question that I asked is actually going to be directed to all of the panelists. Is everybody comfortable?
Yeah, we thought it was a graceful entrance onto the seat here, yeah.
Well choreographed.
Just don't fall off.
Choreographed.
Okay, so the first question, I'm going to have to start with you, Heidi. I'm actually going to have all of you answer this question. But I want to know, what do you know or predict will be the focus of your technology strategy in the next year? Or maybe it's your top 3 initiatives in the next year.
For next year, the number one priority at our company right now in IT is, and it's kicking off an implementation of an upgrade to our legacy customer information system. And that system has been like the heart of our company, and it's over 30 years old, based in COBOL. So we've had an intensive year building up to this implementation of selection. So we're excited about that. Other initiatives tied to workforce automation, other legacy systems that we're looking at moving also in the near term after the CIS.
Darren?
Ron can probably relate to this. One of the things that's interesting when you work in the public sector is we have many bosses. So a lot of our strategic initiatives are grouped around the State Board of Higher Education. They have a strategic plan that we fit into. Also, the legislature gets involved with us. So from a strategic perspective, I think we can probably group what we're going to do in the next biennium in 3 different ways. First, there were some mandated things that the actually it's law now that we have to execute. The second area is all around security. We have a handful of different things that revolve around security. And then the third area is students, because whereas we have bankers and power company and all those different things, our core piece is education, is working with students. So we have a group of strategic initiatives specifically focused on trying to help our student experience.
I'm not in public sector, and I have a lot of bosses too. So I think the 3 things that we know we'll be doing a lot of is security, kind of always and forever. Just a bunch of different things that we end up doing in there. Data is going to be one. Kind of generically, I kind of say data, but it's going to be. We've been kind of notified that our data warehouse is going to be sunset in 2.5 years. So that's we know our date. Now we got to try to find scope and effort that gets us in there. But we spend a lot of time talking about 360-degree view of our customers. So depending on who you are, how many customers, or how many accounts you have with us, you might have in some cases up to 7 passwords to get onto systems. Depending on just the a lot of different roles you might be in. So how do we kind of pull a lot of that together, both for customers, but then how do we make that useful for our employees as well? And then the last is I kind of grouped a couple, or would group a couple as kind of growth and maturity. The growth for us is we've open new branches, open new offices, do different things. So that's kind of a constant. Keeping up with that actually ends up being one of our easier things that we can do. We have a cookie cutter. Here's how we open a new branch, and kind of know what we're going to do there. The maturity part of that is but then do we do it well? That once that's all done, once we put the new branch online, how do we manage that? Kind of for the next 20 years that it's going to be there, and that's I think a lot of where we'll spend quite a bit of time just in harnessing that growth. We can add a branch, but now what?
And for me, I think I'm repeating what they said. Security is going to be a main focus across the board for everybody. From the sounds of it, we will be ramping up some of our alignment with some of the NIST standards that have come out. And then next year, we're going to come out with a new CMS. Our website is being redesigned, and that's a very large initiative for us because there's so many little facets to the website that you build it over time, things get integrated, and then all of a sudden, if you want to do a new thing, it's not as simple as throwing something up. It's redesign of a lot of different aspects. Third, I think we need to kind of improve our disaster recovery. We don't test it enough, and we certainly have enough things in place, I think, for sustainability and resiliency, but it doesn't get tested like it needs to be.
More floods then would help?
That was a definitely significant test over time. So.
Great. So one thing I want you, so to me, kind of the theme that I am trying to work with at nVision is connections. And as you hear these leaders talk about their initiatives and things that are going on, think, if there's alignment and you're going through some of those same things, I encourage you to reach out and connect with each other. I think it's the power of meeting each other and working through some of those together is pretty important. So think about that as we go through. So my first question is for Heidi. We all know that disaster recovery is a critical component of a technology strategy. So tell us how Ottertail approaches disaster recovery and how the business and IT work together on this.
Sure. Disaster recovery is really critical at a power company. You can imagine, our industry is required to keep the grid reliable, and so we have heavy regulation, particularly for any of our assets that are critical infrastructure. And there's strong requirements that we have to meet on that define and help us know exactly what we have to provide for disaster recovery for that portion of our business. And then we have the non-critical infrastructure side of our business, the enterprise side, and that tends to be not as structured, because to try to take the disaster recovery lessons from our regulated side and move them over to our enterprise side is onerous, very cumbersome. Just the documentation efforts on the regulated side are extreme, and so it's difficult to try to mirror that. However, there's good lessons there that we can learn. We work closely with the business. We like to have a tiered approach to disaster recovery. We want to identify the tier 0, the active things that you have to have on that, in any kind of disaster, that you can make sure then that you can even rebuild if it's your Active Directory or your DNS, and then recognizing what's in your tier 1, your critical systems, typically your revenue systems, and then build out from there. And then working closely with the business on what are the metrics, what do they expect you to deliver back on. And it's really interesting, the conversations that we hear on that. I can have one vice president saying, well, that can take a week. We don't need to pay too strong for that. And that owner of that system saying, we can't be down for more than one day. And they corner you in your office to tell you that. And so, that there's some alignment that has to happen on disaster recovery, and making those conversations happen, and then, carrying those out takes a lot of effort, but really necessary to have the business involved.
Awesome. So Gary, with major corporations reporting data security breaches almost monthly, what advice or recommendations do you have for our audience for how they can be proactive in managing security?
I didn't tell you this beforehand, but I gave a whole speech on this in this very room, I think, a year ago. But the key things that we kind of talk about and we look at is kind of starts with the word vigilance. I kind of would typically put that as a sub bullet of prayer. It's keeping an eye on things, keeping it top of mind, and making sure that you kind of know what you need to be looking at. First of all. A lot of times that might come into issue of, well, I guess I didn't know I should have been looking at, but look at that. But there you go. But really for us, it's vigilance, and then I think a lot of what we talked about last year, and kind of still, and we've added our other couples, is layers. We know there's not going to be one thing that's going to stop every type of attack, but each type of attack probably has one thing that will stop it, if that kind of makes sense. Kind of the logic from both sides. So we continue to look for, hopefully unobtrusive to productivity, but tools and techniques that we can add in to just kind of keep building up, the layers of protection that we have. But and knowing that we're going to catch the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, but always kind of then looking at for the different types of attacks or different things that we see throughout the year is which layer stopped it. And did we have anything behind it if that one didn't? So because again, just trying to make sure we understand the different attack vectors as well. So it's a kind of the layers, but then it is kind of to one of our what we're going to keep doing year after year is just those are going to be, that's the first, I'll say X% of our budget is going to kind of continue to go towards. We are still a private company. X% of our budget will go towards security, and just every year we'll be doing something new and different, and it's additive. I mean, I don't know that I could tell you anything that we've turned off in terms of security over the last 5-6 years that we've just done more and more. So it's vigilance and layers, if I give you 2 words.
Great. So Darren, what changes are you seeing in how you deliver and support technology in line with the variety of generations in our workforce and in the education system today?
Well, I think we talked about earlier just the idea of mobile, and really that's probably the single biggest thing that's changed is we're working with a generation of students that expect to have access to everything on their mobile device, and not just one mobile device, but probably multiple mobile devices. So if you break that down, there's an infrastructure aspect to that. Many of you are probably in the same boat that, we originally built Wi-Fi networks for coverage, not density. And all of a sudden we have a density issue in education. I would imagine some of you fight with that too, is that where we used to think that, well, every person might need one connection in a classroom, we might find that that's 3 or 4 perhaps in a classroom. So there's an infrastructure component to dealing with the mobile revolution. I think the other piece is how do we take big iron systems like PeopleSoft, which is one of our core pieces, and make that more friendly from a mobile perspective. And we just actually rolled out a new mobile app just a few months ago that went from that kind of app that a student might look at the start of the semester, and that's all, to an app that has features and capabilities for them to use throughout the semester. So I certainly think you have to break it down into thinking about who our customers are our students, and what do we do to make sure we give them what they need. The third piece I'll just mention is in the NDUS strategic plan from the board office, they talk about making sure that we can provide access anytime, anywhere to any student that wants it. And that's a challenge. We haven't operated necessarily like a system in every way that we could. So easy example is how many of you have had kids and they want to apply for 3 colleges in North Dakota and they fill out about 80% of the information 3 times. Well, that's not a very user-friendly approach to it. When they become students, if they're in a Blackboard environment and they might be taking the core of their classes at North Dakota State, but 1 class from BSC, that's 2 different environments where it should all be in the same learning management system. So there's a number of things that revolve around, but the core stress is mobile.
Great. So maybe to piggyback off that, Ron, how do you, within the city, how do you enable and support multiple devices and operating systems so that employees can work from anywhere? How close are you to that, or how are you working towards it?
Well, my city employees would probably be better one to answer how close I am. Email's fairly ubiquitous, so if they have an application, they can configure and get their emails, or if they are on an outside device, they can get it through OWA. For tablets, we use an MDM, and that provides the document sharing, document editing, and also the security capabilities that we need on those tablets. And then for people who need more robust applications where they need a full desktop, laptop kind of solution, on the public safety side, we run a client application, but we use a persistent VPN NetMotion to maintain consistency so that application functions even when the squad car or the fire truck or something goes out of range of connectivity. The VPN will maintain that. For other employees that really need an application that's running on their desktop and things like that, then we use a Cisco VPN and we allow them to get in there through layers of security, but they can get to their desktop through RDP, and then they can do pretty much everything that their desktop's capable of doing.
So Heidi, I've had a lot of conversations lately with a lot of clients about change management. I know it's a hot topic, and how we handle it is different depending on who you are, but I want Heidi to tell us about your experience with that and how Otter Tail approach has changed throughout the organization.
Change management is just huge with IT projects. You all probably have successes and failures with it. At Otter Tail, we have heavily relied on our public relations department to help us, and they are a great resource helping communicate about change, but as we all probably have learned, communicating to somebody that change is happening is not the same as having them adopt the change. That's a whole different arena. And but the PR department has been really a right hand in terms of communicating reasons why change is happening. So we work closely with them on it. And then we've just had a growing recognition that change requires every individual. You know, it's Becky and Charlie and Debbie and every single person. And if you don't have every single person coming along, you end up with a Swiss cheese outcome. I don't know if any of you have heard that expression. But, you know, if you're wanting the full value of the system to be realized, it takes all those individuals having adopted the change and using the new system or whatever the new change is to realize that full value. So for change management, we really rely also on having you know, individuals brought along, having involvement of stakeholders up front. The CIS project I mentioned earlier, we have stakeholders involved in the whole selection process. They have a strong voice in it. They have sessions where they have interaction with the people on the project so that they're hearing what's happening. We have executive level support, and we make sure that there's enforcement of what's happening, and that it's an expectation that you're going to participate, and that it isn't, it's not okay to go maverick on changes that are happening. So that's a big thing. But communicating the why, and then also giving the opportunity for people to participate as it's rolled out, and have strong training and maybe phased deployments. That's also been very effective for us.
Great. So Gary, you mentioned you know, adding new branches and getting that down to a science and those types of things. So the question I have for you is, with Bell State Bank and Trust growing and having multiple locations, how does IT support collaboration across all those new locations and geographies?
I will give you, let's go with a little background, and then I will give you kind of what IT is not doing or what other folks are doing, and then what IT is doing. So we are a service company. You know, we're a bank. I mean, I think people understand banks, but you know, kind of the conversation or the message that we talk about a lot is the color of our money is the exact same as our competitors. You know, money is a commodity in terms of banking. You know, it is the same no matter where you go. So it's our service and how we provide people access to their money, or different options, different products that they want to use. So we start, you know, most everything from service. And a lot of it comes down to face-to-face. So actually, one of our most expensive collaboration tools that we've purchased recently is an airplane. So you know, as we go to you know, it's not an IT plane. Let me say that, but it's, you know, with Minneapolis and with, you know, kind of the further reach that we have, you know, where it used to be all of our branches were in Fargo, Moorhead, you know, maybe out to DL. You know, we now go to Alexandria, but you know, kind of two bank branches in Minneapolis, but 30 other sites, you know, with mortgage sites and that. The plane has been, you know, kind of something that has really driven face-to-face communication when, you know, and so that's on, you know, kind of a pretty regular schedule. So that's kind of the non-IT side of it, but face-to-face is highly valued in terms of collaboration for how the bank operates, you know, both externally, but as well as internally. We have, you know, kind of now to probably the answer more for this room is we've invested reasonably heavily into video conference, and so, you know, added that to several of the different sites, and really kind of started to push that. But again, the theme there is still face-to-face. It's you know, you're still on the same you know, computers, you're still on all the same other different things, but you know, being able to see folks, you know, understand how they're reacting, and working with that, you know, has been good. And I guess I'll give the plug, since I think they're in the next room. I think I see him over here. Is, you know, Video Guidance is who we went to help you know, implement our video conference. You know, another one that I'll say is relatively new in the bank, and it's been, you know, kind of coming from Microsoft and my past. It was difficult to understand that it didn't exist. Is we actually just recently in the last 2 years implemented Link. You know, instant messaging didn't exist in the bank, and there was actually it was interesting. There was actually a little kind of pushback at first. Well, don't we have email to do that? Sure, you do. You could use email. You can, you know, send back and forth 30 emails, and that's just like instant message. So yep, it's no different. But then when we kind of started seeing desktop sharing, and, you know, kind of, you know, a couple different, we don't have, you know, widespread video cameras or webcams out there. But as people kind of started to use it, it really just was kind of a groundswell, and it has kind of, you know, gotten out. As we didn't put it on everybody's desktop at first, there were certain departments that were just resistant to it. You know, no, don't put that on my team's computers. Great, we won't do that. If you don't want it, we don't want to, you know, kind of, you know, go there. it was interesting to see how fast those minds changed as other departments talked about, yeah, but I do this, and we're going to be on the phones. We're in our virtual bank, in our call center. I want to be able to reach out to your team and ask a question because I'm on the line with a customer. I need to be able to do this. It needs to be fast. And so, there's been kind of pressure from departments that actually has brought that along. But again, a lot kind of starts from that face-to-face, but then, we've just been trying to find different tools that we can, kind of add into that to make it hopefully better. And again, I think our usage starts to show that it certainly is, the usage, must mean that it's better.
Great. So I know there's been a lot of talk in the Fargo-Moorhead region about the workforce study that's come out recently. My question for Darren is that how does the workforce study that came out this year impact the university system? What discussions, changes, initiatives are going on to address the expected shortage, and how is the university system helping with that?
Well, we're the same victim as business to the workforce shortage. So we have just as much struggle hiring highly technical people as anybody else does. So we're quite attuned to it, but I think we're also in a position where we can start to make a difference with that also. Whether you've seen it or not, Dr. Hageroth, one of the first things he did was start an initiative called Bach and You, which is meant to try to take displaced oil workers that are in North Dakota already that perhaps have been laid off from their job, but to try to get them into primarily our Western institutions to start to retool into a different profession. And I think it's going to take things like that to try to take some of the advantage that the economic boom of the last 5 or 6 years has given us, but to leverage it to keep good people in the state, get them into our institutions, and then try to focus in on where our workforce shortages are, try to help them do that. We're having lots of conversations. We talk security about, we have a big long-term goal of making sure that we become a player in cybersecurity education in North Dakota. And we've got some things in the works there that aren't fully fleshed out, but that's another area that we feel like there's just not enough qualified people out there with a background in cybersecurity to meet the demands, even in not just North Dakota, but actually across the United States. So.
Sure. So when I asked that question, you all were doing this. So anybody else have anything they would like to share about the workforce study or what your participation in that or your thoughts? I know, Gary, you're going to be talking about it tomorrow, but
I got a whole morning tomorrow morning on this. So a couple of things. So then in kind of my second piece, actually Ron's with the group as well. IT Council, we took on this initiative 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, with our career awareness program. Seeing this shortage coming and looking at the stats many years ago, and trying to find different ways of how do we engage. In that particular case, we looked at kind of K through 12 of where do you need to engage kids in their school so that they start to take the right kind of STEM classes, take the right technology classes, different things, so that they're set up. And what we kind of started to learn in there is as early as 3rd grade you need to engage, or kind of think of when we first started, people were telling us 6th grade is kind of it, but but it's how then do we go get a message that's right for the different age groups, but leads them through K through 12, gets them into the university system so that they're ready to go take on the challenges there. So that it's kind of a long play, and I don't I'm sure some of the kids that we talked to in high school at the beginning are now out in the workforce, but it's for a lot of the kids, they're still not out of high school yet that we've been focusing on. So we don't really know if this is going to be changing minds or moving the dial, but it's one of those long play things that you need to do to kind of get there. So so that's where we've spent a lot of time through the IT Council is in this career awareness program. So if anybody's interested in that, there's always looking for people willing to speak in schools, or I usually just kind of say, adopt your own school. You don't need us. You don't need anything that we're doing. We're here to help if you want to try to pool some resources, but go to your own school, ask what you can do, ask if you can give a presentation, all these different things. These are this is just we end up trying to coordinate some of that, but you don't need us to do that. So I always encourage that whenever I'm in a group setting like this. I think then tomorrow morning, actually, there is an EDC sponsored event that is industry and education coming together to try to talk about different ideas, and different things have kind of come as just experiential learning. So are internship programs right? Are there good ways that students in universities, specifically for what we're doing tomorrow, but there will be some K through 12, but are the internship programs right? Is there good intellectual property transfer capabilities? Is that set up right so that when students, when researchers are doing this work, typically then funded by industry, how do we make sure that knowledge or that that IP can get into industry's hands to then kind of pay off their investment? So a lot of different things kind of come into what's possible there, or and maybe for the moment what's not possible, so needs to be changed.
Great. So one of my last questions before we open it up for questions, and then I have one for you, Heidi, that you're not prepared for, but it's okay. So Ron, can you tell us a little bit about how the City of Fargo, within IT, since you already talked about so many different divisions that you have, how do you align your technology with those different needs? How do you connect to the business and make sure that you're meeting the needs of all those different sectors?
So first off, I think we've tried to kind of standardize on some stacks to make sure that we have the skill base to support the computing infrastructure behind what we're doing. And then we also tried to make sure we have high-speed connectivity to all the locations so that we can support any of that infrastructure. That with that as your platform, then when we get to the business need, they need to drive what their need is, and we need to help them find the solution that technically fits that need. Whether it's off the shelf or customized, we'll do either. It really depends on what their needs are, and they have to help identify those specific needs. And I think we can enable those. We'll probably drive their business solution a little bit based on the stacks that we support, but for the most part, we'll try and support whatever solution we can get for them that'll fit their needs best.
Great, thank you. So Heidi, I thought of one while I was standing here. I know you recently went to the Gartner conference, and I'm curious if you have any takeaways that you'd like to share, or what things did you take away? What were the hot topics while you were there? There may be others in the audience that were there too, but I know there was a lot of us that didn't get to go, so.
This year they kind of build, from my understanding, on themes, and I think last year was big data, and this year their big theme was algorithms. And so with this, and I think 2 years before that it was the Internet of Things. So it was the Internet of Things, and with that, when you have more and more connected devices, you're going to have more and more data, and with more and more data, now what do you do with it? So now we're in the algorithms phase, but that was kind of the theme that they're carrying forward. Yeah, it was really interesting. It's such a large conference. There's so many tracks. You can it's a plethora of things to take in. But those were the major keynotes.
Okay, one more question before I thought of, so you guys aren't prepared for this either, but I know all of us like to write down good books, articles, blogs. Maybe each of you could just kind of tell us, what do you follow? How do you keep up on technology trends, and is it industry specific and that type of thing? Can you share your thought leadership research?
Me?
Yeah,
I just
you're
went,
first.
all right.
Let's go down the line.
Gartner has been a great resource for us, and we haven't had a subscription with Gartner for very long, just a couple of years, but they have been a great resource. Otherwise, networking, talking to people, getting book ideas. Cybersecurity has been a big topic, so there's been more interest in that, and we've been reading more on that. Yeah, I think it's mostly the networking, and it depends, if it's your systems people or your telecom people who you're talking to,
Sure.
what areas you'll get. So
Yeah.
I just purchased Spam Nation. I think that's been out for a long time, but I'm finally going to get around to reading that one.
Awesome. How about you, Darren?
I'm an RSS feed junkie. That's just a key part of how I consume information. So it's everything from security to education to leadership to all these different things that come through on a daily stream. And that's primarily how I do it, but I do read a lot also. I tend to probably not read technology books per se, but probably more leadership cultural books. It's an oldie but a goodie, but I go back to Good to Great a lot by Jim Collins. I just think there's a lot of actionable information in that book as you're trying to take an organization and mold them or help them take that next step. So Seth Godin's another one that I think puts out great, easy little read books that if you want to do a book study with staff for a point, those are really popular or good for me anyway.
Our team is also reading right now, the supervisors who are here with me, we're going through the book Predictable Success by Les McEwen. Same thing, not necessarily technology related, but great on leadership, organizational development, getting your department on track.
Awesome. How about you, Gary?
I don't read as much as I used to. That's maybe a sad
You too busy
fact.
presenting or what?
Yeah, that sadly might be it too, but it might be ADHD as well. I don't sit on planes near as much as I used to, is I think a big it. But so Twitter ends up being, and then I won't say as I've carefully cultivated the the folks that I follow there, but I do tend to have quite a mix of, I can always tell every morning is between the ABC and CNN kind of more reporters that I follow. They're really busy in the morning. So it's the just a couple that I see. So I get a ton of news in the morning, kind of technology and random things, kind of throughout the day on just kind of then the more variety. And in the evening is when I then try to catch up. Then maybe more I kind of see then a few more of things like The Verge and a few of these others that kind of end up being into more the technology trends. But what and Mark said it this morning is kind of know your industry. A lot for me over the last several years has just been learning banking. So I have a few different kind of more bank specific focus of people who give technology or other different thoughts on the banking industry, because I was a customer of Bell State Bank for 20 years, but I knew nothing of banking as I came into the role. So a lot of my time in the last several years has been just kind of more banking specific types of feeds, blogs, et cetera.
Awesome. How about you, Ron?
I've got a stack of professional books that I don't seem to be getting to. And
We all
my
do.
political suspense books are getting whittled down a little bit quicker. On the periodical side, I think CIO Magazine and Public Technology Magazine are pretty good references for me. And then typically Google is the answer to all my research beginning points. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So at this time, I want to open it up to our audience to ask questions of our panelists. Does anybody have the first question? Anybody? Brad?
Otherwise, you're going to get more jokes from me, so I would strongly
Yeah,
say.
thank
Oh,
you.
look at there. That was. Wow.
Thank you.
I have a question for Darren regarding to NDSU's data breach a few years ago. I guess how was that detected, and I guess what are your recommended actions after you realize you've had a data breach?
So NDSU or NDUS?
Well, I guess in the U.S. in general, but how
Yeah.
NDSU went
Because
about.
NDSU had a little issue too, but we were not really involved in that. So the NDUS security incident is what we prefer to call it. It was a data breach. It was really one of those situations where somebody was using the compute power of a server that was exposed. They had accessed that server in your typical malware type approach with compromised credentials. So very typical when you read how things are captured. By the way, a really important number to me is 35, because I was on the job for 35 days when we had our data breach. That's a really important number to me that I think about every day. So we did the typical things. Obviously we did the immediate mitigation piece. We made some very quick changes to where that system sat to try to add layers on top of it. It was a system that had been used for many, many years in the university system, and like we're all guilty of, I think it had slowly morphed from one purpose to another, and they hadn't rethought where it belonged in the schema of things. So, I think what we learned is probably two things. First off, I think the better you are prepared for when it happens, and it will likely happen to all of you, the better off it's going to go. So I would put us as probably, we were maybe prepared about 30% of what we should have been. I don't think we were as prepared. We're far better prepared today when we hit that. I think that's important. I think institutionalizing security, a little bit what's already been talked about, is really trying to make sure we understand it's just a part of everyday doing business. That, yep, it might cause some inconvenience, but it's absolutely a part of doing business. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is to really try to be prepared up front so the day it happens you can really focus on how to mitigate it and how to deal with it. And then I think probably the second piece, I said there were two, so I have to come up with a second one, even though I kind of merged the two together. So the second one, since I'm making it up, and I'm not really making it up, probably in my mind revolves more around the culture of higher ed. You know, I think every area has culture, and higher ed's culture is very open and very sharing. You know, the idea of a firewall is something that for years in higher ed was not wanted. IPS, IDS, not wanted. Well, those things have happened since, and I think that's really a key. And those are cultural issues. They're not anything but that. So I guess that's what I've learned.
Do we have time for another question? All right, does anybody have another question for our panel? See, everybody's.
One for Heidi, if I can.
You have one for Heidi, Gary. Go ahead.
Sorry, since I'm seeing others, I mean, I really want your questions, but I'll fill the gap here.
Yeah.
So Ted Koppel, did you see 60 Minutes on, anybody who's watched 60 Minutes on Sunday? Ted Koppel says the grid is already compromised. He's done research the last year and a half, wrote a book, somewhat controversial. He's bought freeze-dried food, he says, and different things. You know, what's kind of the industry reaction, or is, and again, I may be really putting you on the spot, but, you know, to security, to that, I mean, I think you hit on it a little bit earlier, but, you know, but it's, do you believe that's true? Do you believe there's anything, you know, kind of in there, or, you know, how, you know, and maybe I think the other question is how isolated is, you know, say an otter tail from, you know, the rest of the grid or different items there. So I'm really putting on, we all had little notes that we pulled out and different things, so this is not on her notes.
I didn't see the 60 Minutes thing. I mean, I've heard different discussions on that. And, you know, they used to say the thing was to keep everybody out, right? You have to keep everybody out. And then they said, well, it's not a question of keeping everybody out. It's if they get in that you can identify, detect, mitigate, and kick them out as soon as you can. And certainly I think in general, the United States grid has been under attack. I mean, anybody reading the news is aware that there's, you know, all kinds of different actors that are trying to do nefarious activities, and the grid is a target. I can say, you know, the regulation that we have on our grid is really strong, and so those systems are isolated from the internet, which is a comfort. And our networking, there are interfaces between the grid, and I certainly can't speak to the, you know, the whole transmission thing. You know, you probably got the worst candidate to answer, but I can do my best to say that as far as they're isolated. So it shouldn't be that if, say, Ottertail was hacked, that they could then jump to, you know, the regional transmission system operator and take down the entire Midwest. They are isolated. So if I can give some reassurances there, but certainly it's something that is constantly being evaluated, much like I'm sure the banking industry.
Absolutely.
And it's a whole different level than it was 10 years ago, that's for sure. And things just keep getting more and more intense. And like you had said, we're not turning anything off, we just keep adding and turning things on. And if one thing can't stop it over here, you know, you want something else that can over here. So there's just a lot of investment in security.
There's one thing I'll jump in. You know, we represent 4 different sectors, and one of the things I use when I talk to higher ed folks is that higher ed is a sector, and we have things just like businesses do that people might want. Mm-hmm. And I always tell them that our efforts right now are kind of like the story when you're in the woods getting chased by a bear. You don't have to be faster than the bear, you got to be faster than the person you're with. You know, so, you know, in the threat, if people are going to go attack higher ed institutions, I want them to come to ours and go, this is too much work. Let's go find one that, you know, let's go find the slower person with it. And I really think that little story really helps solidify it with people to understand that, you know, it's layers, it's constant vigilance is a good word. It's all those things, but you don't have to stop every single attacker. You just have to make them go away. You know, go deal with somebody else.
And then just to comment on that, I think there's been a shift. I think, you know, maybe 5 years ago it was they can't get in. We focused our time on them not getting in, and now it's, okay, what if they do get in, now what? I think that now what wasn't the focus, then, and now it is. So great dialogue. Anybody else have any other questions, or do we have time for more?
I think we're going to have to cut them a little short here for time. But I think all of our speakers, our guests, are going to be here at least through lunch, so please feel free to hit them up. Although I must say, those are some really good questions, so I think it's only fair. Ron, how are you going to lower property taxes? And Gary, I want a higher interest rate on my checking account. So I think those are fair questions you guys should have to address today as well. But okay, so please give me a very, very, very good round of applause thanking our speakers and Amber. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes before we go into our 11 o'clock session, and I know that many of you installed too much Java for your storage, so I would suggest you have about 10 minutes to take care of that, and then we will have a breakout. So please look at your agenda now. Now is where you'll have multiple choices throughout the rest of the day. One quick housekeeping piece. This is the last time we'll all be together in the same room. Remember at lunchtime, grab your lunch and then come back in here to eat it. We'll have some vendors up here on stage as well. So 10-minute break, 11 o'clock, the breakouts all start, and we'll have one in here as well. So look at your agendas. Thank you.